She saved the CEO's lost dog. He had her arrested until he watched the tape. Before we begin this story, tell me where you're watching from and rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments. Enjoy the story. The rain in Seattle wasn't just rain tonight around her face. It didn't help. The water soaked through the cheap fabric, chilling her to the bone. She was walking home from a double shift at the downtown animal shelter, a job that paid minimum wage and broke her heart daily, but it was the only thing keeping her tiny, damp basement apartment from foreclosure. Her bank account balance was currently $14.50. Her student loans for veterinary school, a dream she'd had to abandon when her dad got sick, were in the tens of thousands. She turned into the alley behind 4th Street to take a shortcut. The alley was dark, smelling of wet cardboard and restaurant grease dumpsters. That's when she heard it. It was faint over the drumming rain. A whimper. Not a stray cat fight, not a raccoon. It was the sound of pure, terrifying distress. Mia stopped. Hello? Another whimper. It sounded wet, weak. She pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating puddles and trash. She followed the sound behind an overflowing dumpster. There, huddled against the cold brick wall, half submerged in icy puddle water, was a dog. It wasn't just any dog. Even covered in mud and shivering violently, Mia knew what she was looking at. It was a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, a purebred, the kind of dog that cost more than her car, the kind of dog that belonged in a penthouse, sleeping on silk pillows, not dying in a filthy alley. "Oh my God," Mia whispered, dropping to her knees into the freezing water. The dog didn't move. Its eyes were glazed over. Its breathing was shallow and rapid, a rattle in its chest. Mia reached out slowly. "Hey, baby, it's okay. I've got you." As her hands touched the dog's fur, she felt two things instantly. First, the intense heat of a raging fever. Second, something hard and metallic under the matted fur of its neck. A collar. It was heavy leather, with a tag that glinted even in the weak flashlight beam. It looked like solid silver. Engraved on it was a single name, Barnaby, and below it, a number. No address, just a number. "Barnaby," Mia murmured, carefully scooping the small, burning hot body into her arms. "Someone is missing you very much." The dog let out a sharp cry of pain when she lifted him. Mia's experienced hands immediately found the problem. His back right leg was hanging at a sickening angle, compound fracture. And based on the wheezing, he likely suffered internal injuries from whatever hit him, a car probably, that didn't bother to stop. She looked at her phone, 2% battery. She looked at the dog in her arms. He was fading fast. He wouldn't survive the hour in this cold, let alone the night. Mia had a choice. She could call animal control, wait 40 minutes for them to arrive, by which time Barnaby would likely be dead, or she could run. She was 3 blocks from the private veterinary clinic where she used to intern before the tuition money ran out. The code to the back door was 1234. She knew where the emergency supplies were. It was breaking and entering. It was theft of medical supplies. If she got caught, she wouldn't just be fired from the shelter, she'd be arrested. Her dream of ever becoming a vet would be permanently over. Barnaby whimpered against her chest, his small heart hammering like a trapped bird against her own. "Hang on," Mia whispered fiercely, tucking him inside her coat against her own body heat. "We're going to get you help. You don't dare die on me." She started running, ignoring the freezing rain, ignoring the holes in her boots, ignoring the fact that she was about to risk her entire future for a stranger's expensive dog. She didn't know that the owner of that silver tag was currently tearing apart his penthouse apartment 40 stories above her, a man whose grief was about to turn into a weapon aimed directly at the person trying to help him. The keypad to the back door of the Paws and Claws veterinary clinic was old, the numbers worn off by years of use. Mia's hands were shaking so badly from the cold and adrenaline that she punched in the wrong code twice. Beep. Error. "Come on," she sobbed, clutching Barnaby against her chest. He had stopped whimpering. That was bad. Silence was worse than pain. She forced herself to breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Click. The lock disengaged. Mia kicked the door open and burst into the sterile darkness of the clinic. It smelled of antiseptic and latex, a smell that used to mean comfort to her, back when she had a future. Now it smelled like a crime scene. She didn't turn on the main overhead lights. That would attract attention from the street. Instead, she flipped on the exam lamp in Surgical Suite B, the room furthest from the windows. "Okay, buddy, stay with me," she whispered, laying the limp dog onto the cold metal table. Under the bright halogen light, the damage was terrifying. Barnaby's gums were pale gray. Shock. He was bleeding internally. The compound fracture in his leg was nasty, the bone exposed. Mia went into autopilot. The muscle memory of 3 years of vet school kicked in, overriding the fear that she was committing a felony. She raided the supply cabinets. IV catheter, saline fluids, tramadol for the pain, antibiotics. She shaved a small patch on his front leg. Her hands, usually rough from cleaning cages, became steady and precise. She found the vein on the first try. As the fluids started to drip into his system, Barnaby let out a long, shuddering breath. His heart rate, which had been erratic, began to stabilize. She cleaned the wound on his leg. She splinted it carefully, wrapping it in soft blue vet wrap. She injected the painkillers. 30 minutes later, the dog was sleeping peacefully. He wasn't out of the woods, but he wasn't dying anymore. Mia slumped against the cabinets, sliding down to the floor. She was exhausted. Her coat was ruined. She was trespassing. Then she remembered the collar. She stood up and unclipped the heavy leather collar to let him breathe easier. She looked at the silver tag again. Barnaby, 555-0199. She pulled out her phone. 1% battery. "Please don't die," she whispered to the phone. She dialed the number. It rang once. "Who is this?" The voice on the other end wasn't panicked. It was cold, sharp, and commanding. It was a voice that expected answers, not problems. "Hello?" Mia stammered. I found your dog. I found Barnaby." There was a silence on the line, a terrifying, heavy silence. "Where is he?" The voice dropped an octave. It sounded dangerous. "If you have hurt him—" "He's hurt, but I have him. I'm at the Paws and Claws Clinic on 4th and Elm. Beep. Her phone died. The screen went black. "No!" She tapped the screen uselessly. She hadn't explained about the clinic being closed. She hadn't explained she wasn't a doctor there anymore. She looked up. In the corner of the surgical suite, a small red light blinked rhythmically in the darkness. The security camera. It was recording everything. Mia stared at it for a second, a wave of paranoia washing over her. "At least if they arrest me for breaking in, there's proof I did it to save him," she thought. She didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes later, there was no polite knock at the door. There was the screech of tires in the alley. Then the back door, which Mia had left unlocked, was kicked open with such force it slammed against the wall. "Police! Nobody move!" Flashlights blinded her. Heavy boots stomped into the suite. Mia threw her hands up, standing in front of the metal table to shield the sleeping dog. "Don't shoot!" she screamed. "He's sedated. Please don't scare him." 3 police officers swarmed the room, guns drawn. But behind them walked a man who made the armed officers look harmless. Arthur Sterling walked into the room like he owned the oxygen everyone was breathing. He was tall, wearing a black trench coat that was dry despite the storm, his face a mask of sculpted fury. He had the kind of eyes that didn't just look, they dissected. He saw the broken lock on the back door. He saw the cabinets raided. He saw Mia, wet, dirty, wearing ragged clothes, standing over the unconscious dog with a syringe still on the tray beside her. He didn't see a savior. He saw a junkie. He saw a thief who had broken into a clinic to steal drugs and had used his dog as leverage. "Barnaby!" Arthur pushed past the officers. He looked at the dog on the table. He saw the bandages, the IV, the stillness. "What did you do to him?" Arthur turned on Mia, his voice a low growl. "Is he dead?"
"No!" Mia cried, tears streaming down her face. "I saved him. He was in the alley. He was in shock. I gave him fluids and pain meds. He's sleeping." Arthur looked at the syringe on the tray. He looked at Mia's shaking hands. "You drugged him," Arthur accused, his logic twisted by panic and prejudice. "You stole him, brought him here to this chop shop to harvest what? Drugs? Or were you planning to ransom him back to me?" "I didn't steal him," Mia shouted, panic rising. "I found him. I broke in to save his life. Check the vitals. Look at his gums. He was dying." Arthur didn't check the vitals. He looked at the police officer. "Arrest her," Arthur commanded. "Sir," the officer hesitated. "She says she was helping." "Look at her." Arthur pointed at Mia with disgust. "She's a vagrant. She broke into a business. She is in possession of controlled substances, and she has my property which has clearly been drugged. I want her arrested for burglary, animal cruelty, and extortion. Now." "No!" Mia struggled as an officer grabbed her wrists. "Please, listen to me. Look at the camera. There's a camera right there." She pointed frantically at the blinking red light in the corner. "Watch the tape," Mia screamed as the handcuffs clicked tight, biting into her skin. "Just watch the tape. It proves I saved him." Arthur didn't look at the camera. He was busy stroking Barnaby's head, checking for a pulse, his face pale with worry. He didn't care about the ramblings of a criminal. "Get her out of my sight," Arthur said coldly, "and tell the DA I want the maximum sentence. Nobody touches my dog." The officer shoved Mia toward the door. She stumbled, looking back one last time. "He needs his next dose of antibiotics in 4 hours. Don't forget, 4 hours." Arthur ignored her. He was already on his phone, calling his own private vet team. Mia was dragged out into the rain, shoved into the back of a squad car. Through the window, she watched Arthur Sterling wrap his dog in his expensive coat, completely unaware that he had just condemned the only person who had cared enough to save Barnaby's life. Inside the dark clinic, the red light of the security camera kept blinking. Blink, 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 recording the truth that Arthur was too arrogant to see. Interior, police station, night. The holding cell smelled of industrial disinfectant and stale despair.
Mia sat huddled on a freezing metal bench, her knees pulled to her chest. The adrenaline was long gone, replaced by a crushing, numbing shock. They had taken her mugshot. They had taken her fingerprints. They had taken her shoelaces so she wouldn't hurt herself. She was shivering, still wearing her damp, dirty clothes. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the look of utter disgust on Arthur Sterling's face. "She's a vagrant. Arrest her." She had saved a life tonight, and her reward was a felony record. She knew what would happen tomorrow. She wouldn't make her shift at the shelter. She would be fired. The rent wouldn't get paid. It was over. A tear leaked out and tracked through the dirt on her cheek. "I hope you made it, Barnaby," she whispered into the cold air. "At least one of us should get to go home." Exterior, Sterling penthouse, living room, night. The penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the rain-soaked city. It was warm, quiet, and unbelievably expensive. Barnaby was lying on a plush cashmere blanket in the center of the living room floor. He was still groggy, but his breathing was steady. Arthur paced around him like a caged tiger, a tumbler of scotch gripped in his hand. Kneeling beside the dog was Dr. Elizabeth Albright, 50s, Seattle's premier private veterinarian. She had arrived 10 minutes after Arthur's frantic phone call. Arthur watched her examine the splint on Barnaby's leg with intense scrutiny. "Well," Arthur demanded, stopping his pacing, "how bad did she hurt him? The police need the medical report to add assault charges. She was sticking needles in him, Elizabeth. I caught her red-handed." Dr. Albright didn't answer immediately. She gently palpated the area around the blue vet-wrap splint. She checked Barnaby's gums. She listened to his heart. She sat back on her heels, a deep frown creasing her forehead. "Arthur," Dr. Albright said slowly, looking up at him, "where did you say you found him? A back alley clinic?"
Yes, a dump. She broke in. She was probably looking for opioids and used Barnaby as a convenient excuse when the cops showed up. Arthur took a large swallow of scotch. It makes me sick to think what she might have injected him with. Dr. Albright shook her head slightly. She injected him with lactated Ringer's solution for shock and what appears to be a standard dose of butorphanol for pain. Arthur paused. What? And this splint? Dr. Albright tapped the blue bandage gently. This isn't amateur hour, Arthur. The pressure is perfect. The stabilization is textbook. Whoever put this on didn't just read a pamphlet. They had training. Arthur scoffed, the ice in his glass clinking. Training? She looked like she hadn't showered in a week. She was a street kid. Then that street kid just saved your dog's life, Dr. Albright said bluntly. She stood up and faced the CEO. Barnaby was hit by a car. His gums tell me he was in severe hemorrhagic shock. If he had been left out in that cold for another hour, his organs would have shut down. The fluids she gave him turned this from a recovery mission into a rescue mission. Arthur stared at her. The scotch turned sour in his mouth. That's impossible, Arthur said, his voice tight. She was hysterical. She was screaming about cameras. Watch the tape! Just watch the tape! Mia's desperate screams echoed in his memory. He had dismissed it as the ranting of a guilty junkie trying to deflect blame. Dr. Albright began packing up her bag. I'm taking him to my clinic for x-rays and observation overnight. He needs that antibiotic dose in, she checked her watch, 3 hours, just like the girl told you. She picked up her bag and looked at Arthur with a disappointed expression. You might want to call the precinct, Arthur, before you ruin the life of the person who saved the only thing you actually care about. Dr. Albright carried Barnaby out to the elevator. Arthur was left alone in his silent, expensive penthouse. He looked at the wet spot on the floor where his trench coat, the one he had wrapped Barnaby in, had sat. He remembered the girl's face in the clinic, the mud on her cheeks, the sheer desperation in her eyes when she begged him not to scare the dog. A cold pit of doubt began to open in his stomach. He hated being wrong. He hated it more than anything.
His phone buzzed on the Marble Island. It was Detective Morrison, the lead officer from the arrest. Arthur answered, his voice rigid. Detective, I assume she's processed? Mr. Sterling, Detective Morrison sounded uncomfortable. We're building the case for the break-in at the clinic. We just pulled the security footage from the cloud server to log it as evidence. Good. Lock her up. Yeah, about that. Morrison hesitated. The captain thinks you should come down here, tonight. Why? I gave my statement. You need to see this, Mr. Sterling, before we file the charges in the morning. It doesn't look like what we thought it looked like. Arthur gripped the phone tighter. What are you talking about? The tape, sir. You need to watch the tape. Arthur Sterling had stood in boardrooms while companies collapsed. He had fired executives without blinking. He had watched millions of dollars vanish in seconds on the stock market. He was a man who did not flinch. But standing in the cramped, dimly lit viewing room of the 12th Precinct, Arthur Sterling felt his knees buckle. Detective Morrison stood silently by the monitor. On the screen, the grainy black and white security footage from the Paws and Claws clinic was playing. The timestamp read 23:14 p.m. On screen, the back door flew open. Mia burst in, soaked to the bone, clutching a limp bundle against her chest. She didn't look like a thief casing a joint. She looked like a woman in panic. Arthur watched, mesmerized and horrified, as Mia laid Barnaby on the table. Zoom in. He saw her hands. They weren't shaking anymore. They were flying. He saw her hook up the IV. He saw her gently stroke Barnaby's head while she waited for the vein to pop. He saw her pull her own coat off, her only coat, and drape it over the shivering dog, leaving herself shivering in a thin t-shirt. Then came the audio. It was muffled, but audible. Hang on, Barnaby. Please, baby, don't go. Your dad is probably looking for you. He's going to be so happy to see you. Arthur stopped breathing. Your dad. She wasn't holding the dog for ransom. She was trying to keep him alive for him. Then the footage showed the phone call. He watched Mia dial. He watched her face light up with hope when he answered, and then crumble into confusion as the phone died.
And then the finale. The police burst in. Arthur watched himself on the screen. He saw himself storm into the room. He saw Mia throw her hands up, stepping in front of the dog to shield him from the guns. "Don't shoot. He's sedated. Please don't scare him." Arthur watched his on-screen self sneer at her. He watched himself point a finger and order the arrest of the girl who was currently shivering in a cell downstairs because she had chosen to save his best friend instead of following the law. Detective Morrison paused the video on a freeze frame. Mia looking back at Arthur as she was dragged away, screaming about the antibiotic dose. "She wasn't lying," Detective Morrison said quietly, breaking the silence. "We checked her prints. Mia Flores, no criminal record. She was a top-tier vet student at UW until 2 years ago, dropped out to care for a sick parent, works at the shelter downtown. She's clean, Mr. Sterling." Arthur felt like he was going to throw up. He remembered the junkie insult. He remembered calling her a vagrant. He remembered the look of devastation in her eyes, not because she was caught, but because he hated her for helping. "She saved him," Arthur whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. She broke in to save him because the clinic was closed. Technically, it's still breaking and entering, but given the context, if you drop the charges, we can release her. If you don't, she's looking at 3 to 5 years for burglary and possession of controlled substances.
Arthur turned around. His face was pale, stripped of all its arrogance. "Drop them," Arthur ordered, his voice cracking. "Drop everything. Expunge the arrest record. I want her out. Now." "It'll take a few hours to process the paperwork," Morrison said. "You can pick her up in the morning." "No." Arthur buttoned his coat, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm not going home. I'm staying here." "Sir, you can't stay in the evidence room." "Then put me in the waiting area," Arthur snapped, the old authority returning, but edged with desperation. "I am not leaving this building until I can look her in the eye and fix this." Interior, holding cell, morning. Sunlight filtered through the high barred windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the stale air. Mia hadn't slept. She was sitting on the bench, hugging her knees, staring at the wall. She was numb. Her life was effectively over. Even if she made bail, the arrest road would show up on background checks. She would never work with animals again. Clank, buzz. The heavy metal door at the end of the hall slid open. "Flores," a guard shouted, "you're free to go." Mia blinked, confused. She stood up slowly, her legs stiff. "What?" "Charges dropped. Complainant withdrew the complaint. Get your stuff." Mia walked down the hallway like a zombie. She collected her envelope of personal effects, her dead phone, her cheap wallet, her keys. She signed the release forms without reading them. She pushed open the heavy front doors of the precinct, stepping out into the blinding morning light of Seattle. The rain had stopped. The air was crisp. She took a deep breath, expecting to walk to the bus stop and go home to figure out how to survive. "Mia!" The voice came from the bottom of the steps. Mia froze. She knew that voice. It was the voice that had ordered her destruction. She looked down. Arthur Sterling was standing next to a black limousine. He looked terrible. He was still wearing the same clothes from the night before. His hair was messy. His eyes were red-rimmed and shadowed. He looked like a man who had spent the night in purgatory. Mia's hands balled into fists at her sides. The fear was gone, replaced with a cold, hard anger. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice raspy from disuse. "Did you forget to charge me for the oxygen I used in your clinic?" Arthur flinched. He took a step forward, his hands raised in surrender. "Mia, please. I watched the tape." "Good for you," Mia spat, descending the stairs. "I hope it was entertaining. Now leave me alone." "I am so sorry," Arthur said. He didn't say it like a CEO apologizing for a stock drop. He said it like a man confessing a sin. Mia stopped. She turned to face him. "You're sorry?" She laughed bitterly. "You called me a junkie. You threw me in a cage. You treated me like I was dirt on your shoe because I didn't have a designer coat." "I know. I was wrong. I was horribly, unforgivably wrong.
Barnaby is alive because of you. Dr. Albright said you saved him. You're the only reason he's still breathing." "I'm glad he's okay," Mia said, her voice softening just a fraction for the dog, but hardening again for the man. "Give him a treat for me. Goodbye, Mr. Sterling." She turned to walk away. "Wait," Arthur called out. "I want to make it right. Let me give you a ride home. Let me pay you a reward. Anything." Mia spun around. Her eyes blazed. "I don't want your money," she said fiercely, "and I definitely don't want a ride. You think you can just write a check and fix the fact that you humiliated me? You think money fixes the fact that you looked at me and decided I was a criminal just because I'm poor?"
She took a step closer to him, poking him in the chest with a dirty finger. "You keep your money, and next time you lose your dog, try looking for him yourself instead of waiting for a vagrant to do it for you." Mia turned and marched down the sidewalk, head held high, leaving the billionaire standing speechless next to his limousine. Arthur watched her go. He felt small. He felt ashamed. And for the first time in his life, he realized that there were some things and some people that his money couldn't buy. But he knew with absolute certainty that he wasn't going to let her walk out of his life. Not like this. Interior Sterling limousine, day. Arthur sat in the back of his car, but he wasn't looking at stock prices or merger contracts. He was looking at a file folder his private investigator had emailed him 10 minutes ago. He swiped through the tablet screen, his frown deepening with every page. Mia Flores, age 24, education, University of Washington, veterinary medicine, 4.0 GPA, Dean's List. Status, withdrawn, financial hardship. Arthur scrolled down to the financial section. It was a sea of red ink. Student loans, $85,000, defaulted. Medical debt, Miguel Flores, father, deceased, $32,000. Current employment, city animal shelter. Hourly wage, $11.50. Arthur lowered the tablet. He felt a lump form in his throat. She had dropped out of being a doctor to pay for her dying father's medical bills. She was working for scraps, living in a basement and drowning in debt. And yet, when he had offered her a reward, likely more money than she made in a year, she had thrown it back in his face because she had too much pride to be bought. "Driver," Arthur said, his voice quiet, "change of destination. Take me to the city animal shelter." "The shelter, sir?" The driver looked in the rearview mirror, confused. "That's in the industrial district. It's not a nice area." "I know." Arthur looked out the window at the passing city. "I have an apology to make and a job offer to deliver. Exterior city animal shelter, day." The shelter was a depressing block of gray concrete surrounded by a chain-link fence. The sound of barking dogs echoed from inside, a chaotic chorus of the unwanted. Arthur stepped out of his limousine. He adjusted his trench coat, a new one, not the one Barnaby had bled on, and walked toward the entrance. He looked out of place, like a diamond sitting in a gutter. He pushed open the heavy metal door. The smell of bleach and wet fur hit him instantly. Interior, shelter, main hallway. He found her in the hallway. Mia was on her knees scrubbing a stain on the floor. She was wearing a uniform that was 2 sizes too big, looking exhausted. Standing over her was a man with a clipboard, her manager, Rick. He was a small man with a petty amount of power and a loud voice. "You're late again, Flores," Rick barked, not noticing Arthur approaching. "I don't care if you were in jail or on the moon. You missed the morning feeding. That's a write-up. One more strike and you're out. Do you hear me?" Mia kept scrubbing, her jaw set tight. "I told you, Rick, I had a family emergency. It won't happen again." "Family emergency," Rick scoffed. "You don't have family, Flores. You have debt, and if you don't scrub that faster, you won't have a job." Arthur felt a flash of rage that rivaled what he felt when he thought Barnaby was hurt. He knew exactly what it felt like to be the bully in the room. Seeing someone else do it to her made him sick. "Excuse me." Arthur's voice cut through the noise like a knife. Rick spun around. He saw the suit. He saw the watch. He saw the face that was on the cover of Forbes last month. Mr. Sterling?" Rick's attitude evaporated instantly.
Can I help you? Looking to adopt. We have some great purebreds in the back. I am not here to adopt, Arthur said coldly, stepping past Rick as if he didn't exist. He stopped in front of Mia.
Mia looked up. She stopped scrubbing. Her eyes widened, then narrowed into slits of suspicion. She stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her pants. "I thought I told you to leave me alone," she said, ignoring her boss's shocked expression. "Flores!" Rick hissed. "Watch your tone. Do you know who this is?" "Yes," Mia said, not breaking eye contact with Arthur. "I know exactly who he is." Arthur ignored Rick. He looked at Mia. "You were right about the money. It was insulting." Mia crossed her arms. "Then why are you here? To get your coat back?" "I'm here because I have a problem, a medical problem, and according to Dr. Albright, you are the only person qualified to solve it." Mia frowned, confused. "What?" "Barnaby," Arthur lied smoothly. "He's back at the penthouse, but he's refusing to eat. He's depressed. He won't let me change his bandages. He snaps at Dr. Albright. He trusts no one, except you." Mia's expression softened instantly. "He's not eating?" "Not a bite. Dr. Albright says it's stress. She says he imprinted on the person who saved him. He needs continuity of care." Arthur took a step closer. He wasn't offering charity now. He was offering a transaction based on her value. "I need a private veterinary nurse, Mia. Someone to live in the penthouse for the next 6 weeks while he recovers, to manage his meds, his therapy, his diet." "Hire a professional," Mia said, though her resolve was wavering. "I am trying to," Arthur said seriously. "I checked your file. 4.0 GPA, top of your class. You are a professional. You just lack the piece of paper because life got in the way." Mia went still. "You checked my file?" "I do my due diligence," Arthur admitted. "I know you dropped out, and I know you're wasting your talents scrubbing floors for," he glanced at Rick, "people who don't respect you." He pulled a contract out of his coat pocket. "This is an employment contract, 6 weeks. The salary is $10,000 for the duration." Rick gasped audibly behind them. Mia's eyes widened. "Plus," Arthur continued, playing his ace card, "if Barnaby makes a full recovery under your care, the Sterling Foundation will grant you a full scholarship to finish your veterinary degree. Tuition, books, living expenses, all of it." The shelter went silent. Even the dogs seemed to stop barking. Mia stared at him. She looked for the trap. She looked for the arrogance, but she only saw desperation and an opportunity to get her life back. "You're trying to buy my forgiveness," Mia whispered. "No," Arthur shook his head. "I'm trying to buy my dog's life, and maybe earn a second chance. But mostly, I just need him to eat. Will you help him?" Mia looked at Rick, who was looking at her with newfound jealousy and fear. She looked at the dirty scrub brush in her hand. Then she looked at the contract. She dropped the brush. It clattered on the concrete. "I need to give 2 weeks' notice," Mia said automatically. "No, you don't." Arthur turned to Rick. "She quits, effective immediately. And if you have a problem with that, you can call my legal department." Arthur turned back to Mia and held out his hand. "Deal?" Mia looked at his hand, the hand that had pointed at her in the police station, but now it was open. She took it. "For Barnaby," she said firmly, "not for you." "Understood," Arthur nodded, hiding a small smile of relief. "The car is outside. Let's go save him." Interior, Sterling penthouse, day. The private elevator doors slid open with a whisper. Mia stepped out, clutching her worn canvas backpack, the only luggage she had managed to pack in 10 minutes. She stopped dead in her tracks. She had expected nice. She hadn't expected this. The penthouse was a sprawling cavern of floor-to-ceiling glass, white marble and modern art that looked like it cost more than the entire animal shelter budget for a decade. The view of Seattle was breathtaking, the city spread out like a toy set below. But Mia didn't look at the view. She looked at the floor. "You can walk on it," Arthur said gently from behind her. "It's just marble, it won't bite." Mia stepped off the elevator mat, her sneakers squeaking slightly.
She felt acutely aware of the dirt on her jeans. "Where is he?" Mia asked, focusing on the mission. "You said he wasn't eating. Is he in critical condition?" "In the living room," Arthur gestured. "Dr. Albright set up a recovery pen." Mia rushed into the living room. There, in a playpen made of gold-finished metal, because of course it was, lay Barnaby. His leg was splinted and blue. He was lying on a memory foam orthopedic bed. As soon as he saw Mia, his ears perked up. "Barnaby!" Mia fell to her knees beside the pen. The dog let out a happy yip. He stood up, wobbly on 3 legs, but upright, and hobbled over to the edge of the pen, his tail wagging so hard his entire back end shook. He licked Mia's hand through the bars, whining with pure joy. Mia laughed, scratching him behind the ears. "Hi, buddy. Look at you. You're up." She checked his gums. Pink. Healthy. She checked his eyes. Bright. Alert. She turned to Arthur, who was standing a few feet away, watching them with a guarded expression. "He looks good," Mia said slowly. "Better than good. You said he was depressed. You said he refused to move." "He was," Arthur said, adjusting his cuffs, "until about 5 minutes ago." "And the eating?" Mia asked flatly. "You said he was starving himself." "He turned his nose up at the organic chicken breast the chef prepared this morning," Arthur insisted. "Dr. Albright was very concerned." Mia narrowed her eyes. She walked over to the small kitchenette set up near the pen. There was a bowl of gourmet dog food untouched. Mia picked up a treat from a jar on the counter. She walked back to Barnaby. "Sit," she commanded softly. Barnaby sat immediately. She held out the treat. Barnaby inhaled it in 1 second and looked for more. Mia turned to Arthur. She held up the empty hand. "He just ate, and he's wagging his tail, and he looks about as depressed as a kid at Disneyland." Arthur cleared his throat. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the view. He looked everywhere except at Mia. "Perhaps," Arthur started, "his appetite returned on sensing your proximity." Mia arched her arms. "Arthur, you lied." Arthur sighed. He dropped the corporate facade. He looked at her, and for a second he looked like a little boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "If I had told you he was recovering well," Arthur admitted quietly, "would you have gotten in the car?" Mia paused. "No." "Exactly," Arthur said. "And I couldn't let you stay at that shelter. Not after what I saw in your file. Not after what I did to you." He walked over to the pen and looked down at the dog. "He was miserable, Mia. Maybe he wasn't dying, but he was looking for you. He whined all night. And frankly, I didn't know how to fix it. I can run a billion-dollar company, but I don't know how to make a dog stop crying."
He looked at her. "I needed you here. The lie was a negotiation tactic." Mia looked at the man who had arrested her yesterday and was now awkwardly confessing to kidnapping her via employment contract. She should be angry. She was angry. But then Barnaby nudged her hand with his wet nose, and she thought about the veterinary school scholarship. "You're a manipulator, Mr. Sterling," Mia said, but the venom was gone from her voice. "I'm a CEO, Miss Flores," Arthur corrected, a small smile touching his lips. "It's the same thing." He gestured to a hallway. "Your room is the second door on the left, the guest suite. It has a private bath. The chef will have dinner ready at 7. Please, make yourself at home." Interior, guest suite, night. Mia opened the door to her room. It was bigger than her entire apartment. King-sized bed, Egyptian cotton sheets, a bathroom with a soaking tub that looked like a swimming pool, and on the bed there was a gift box. Mia walked over and opened it. Inside was a set of scrubs, but not the cheap, scratchy polyester ones she wore at the shelter. These were soft, tailored, navy blue scrubs embroidered with Mia Flores, veterinary specialist, and underneath them a brand new stethoscope, a Littman Cardiology 4, the kind she had drooled over in vet school but could never afford. Mia ran her fingers over the embroidery. Tears pricked her eyes. He hadn't just given her a job. He had given her back her identity. Interior, living room, later. It was 10 p.m. The lights were dimmed. Arthur was sitting on the white sofa trying to read a report on his tablet, but he wasn't reading.
He was watching. Mia was sitting on the floor inside the playpen. She had refused to sit on the fancy couch in her jeans. She had Barnaby's head in her lap. She was gently massaging his injured leg, whispering to him in Spanish. Descansa, perito. Todo está bien. Arthur watched the way her hands moved, gentle, capable, loving. He watched the way the light from the city reflected in her dark hair. He felt a strange tightening in his chest. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was something else, something dangerous. "You speak Spanish to him?" Arthur asked, startled. "Oh, yeah, my dad. He used to say animals understand the tone, not the words. Spanish softer." "What are you saying?" "I'm telling him he's safe," Mia smiled sadly, "and that he's a lucky boy to live in a castle." Arthur put his tablet down. "It's not a castle. It's just a condo." "It has an elevator, Arthur," Mia teased. "It's a castle, and that makes you the king." "And what does that make you?" Arthur asked, leaning forward slightly. Mia looked around the room. She looked at the luxury she didn't belong in. "I'm the court jester," she said with a self-deprecating laugh, "here to entertain the king's dog." Arthur's face grew serious. "No," he said firmly. "You're the knight." Mia blinked. "You saved him, when the king was too stupid to protect him. You're the knight, Mia." The air between them suddenly felt very thin. The distance between the sofa and the floor seemed to shrink. Mia's heart did a traitorous little flip. Barnaby let out a loud snore, breaking the moment. Mia laughed nervously. "The knight needs to sleep, and so does the patient."
She stood up, brushing off her jeans. "Good night, Arthur." "Good night, Mia." Arthur watched her walk down the hall. When her door clicked shut, the penthouse felt twice as empty as it had before she arrived. He looked at Barnaby, who was sleeping soundly for the first time in days. "You like her, don't you, boy?" Arthur whispered. Barnaby didn't answer, but Arthur knew the answer, because he was starting to like her too, and that was a problem, a very big problem. Week 1. Mia is on the floor with Barnaby, holding a treat. She moves it slowly to the right. Barnaby turns his head, stretching his neck. Mia, "Good boy, look at that range of motion." Arthur is watching from the kitchen island, drinking coffee. He isn't reading the news. He's watching Mia. He smiles. Week 2. Arthur comes home early. He finds Mia trying to lift Barnaby into the bathtub for hydrotherapy. She's struggling with his weight. "Arthur, allow me." He rolls up his dress shirt sleeves, revealing forearms, Mia notices. He lifts the dog gently. Their arms brush. A spark of electricity. They stare at each other for a beat too long before Arthur lowers the dog into the water. Week 3. A rainy Sunday. The TV is on. Arthur, Mia, and Barnaby are all on the white sofa. Violation of house rule number 1. No dogs on the furniture. Barnaby is sleeping with his head on Arthur's lap. Mia is asleep on the other end of the couch, her foot accidentally touching Arthur's leg. Arthur looks at his dog, then at Mia. He carefully pulls a cashmere throw blanket over her without waking her up. He doesn't move his leg. Week 4. Barnaby is running. It's a hobble run, but he's moving across the living room chasing a ball. Mia cheers, "Go, Barnaby, go!" Arthur laughs, a loud, booming laugh that sounds foreign in the glass house. He high-fives Mia. He doesn't let go of her hand immediately. Interior, Sterling penthouse. Evening. It was Friday night of the 4th week. The atmosphere in the penthouse had shifted from clinical recovery to domestic bliss. Mia was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a salad. She wasn't wearing scrubs. She was wearing a soft sweater and leggings, barefoot. Arthur was opening a bottle of wine. "So," Arthur said, pouring 2 glasses, "Barnaby's checkup is tomorrow. Dr. Albright says if the x-rays look good, the splint comes off." "That's great news," Mia said, slicing a cucumber. But her voice was tight. "It is." Arthur walked over and handed her a glass. "But you don't sound happy." Mia put the knife down. She looked at him. "If the splint comes off,
My job is done, she said quietly. The contract ends. Barnaby doesn't need a nurse anymore. Arthur froze. He hadn't thought about the contract in weeks. He had forgotten that she was technically an employee with an expiration date. Mia, Arthur set his glass down, we can extend the contract or change it. Barnaby needs maintenance, walkers, sitters. You want me to stay as a dog walker? Mia asked, with a sad smile on her face. No, Arthur stepped closer. I want you to stay. He didn't add a title, he just let the words hang there. He reached out and took her hand, the one that wasn't holding the wine. His thumb traced her knuckles. This place was a morgue before you got here. You brought the life back, and I don't want to go back to the quiet. Mia looked up at him. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Arthur, she breathed, I'm just the vet nurse. You're the billionaire. This isn't real. It feels real, Arthur murmured. He leaned in. Does this feel real? He tilted his head. Mia didn't pull away. She leaned in too. The scent of wine and expensive cologne filled her senses. Her eyelids fluttered shut. Ding! The elevator chime, the sound of doom, rang out. Arthur pulled back sharply, looking confused. I didn't authorize any guests. The elevator doors slid open.
The woman who stepped out was a vision of icy perfection. She was tall, blonde, and wearing a white Chanel suit that looked like it had never touched a speck of dust. She was dragging a Louis Vuitton suitcase behind her. Vivian Vanderbilt, 30s, scanned the room with laser-like precision. Her eyes landed on Arthur, then on Mia, then on the wine glasses, then on the dog sleeping on the sofa. "Arthur," Vivian said, her voice like shattered glass, "why is there a mongrel on the Fendi sofa? And why is the maid drinking our vintage Pinot?" Arthur went pale. "Vivian." Mia stepped back, pulling her hand away from Arthur's as if she had been burned. She looked at Vivian. She recognized her from the society pages. Vivian Vanderbilt, shipping heiress, socialite, and apparently Arthur's significant other. "I thought you were in Paris," Arthur stammered, walking toward her but stopping short of a hug. "Until next month." "I came back early to surprise you for our anniversary." Vivian dropped her suitcase. She walked past Arthur and stood in front of Mia. She looked Mia up and down, the messy bun, the leggings, the bare feet. "I didn't know we hired live-in staff," Vivian said, turning to Arthur with a raised eyebrow. "Although, judging by the lack of a uniform, she seems to be confused about her duties." "Vivian, this is Mia," Arthur said, his voice hardening slightly. "She is Barnaby's medical specialist. She saved his life." "Barnaby?" Vivian looked at the beast with undisguised disgust. "That beast is still alive? I told you to put him down when he got hit. It's cruel to keep a crippled animal alive, Arthur. It's messy." Mia felt a surge of rage so hot it nearly blinded her. "He is not a beast," Mia spoke up, her voice shaking, "and he is not crippled. He is recovering." Vivian turned back to Mia, looking amused. "It speaks." She turned to Arthur. "Darling, pay the girl, give her a tip, and get her out. I'm home now. We don't need a babysitter for a dog." She walked over to Arthur and placed a possessive hand on his chest, right over his heart. She leaned up and kissed him on the cheek, leaving a smear of red lipstick. "Besides," Vivian whispered loud enough for Mia to hear, "I'm allergic to poverty. It makes me sneeze." Arthur looked at Vivian, then he looked at Mia. Mia stood there holding her wineglass, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. She realized then that the castle wasn't hers, the king wasn't hers. She was just the hired help who had forgotten her place. "I'll pack my things," Mia said quietly. "Mia, wait!" Arthur stepped away from Vivian. "You don't have to go. The contract was for Barnaby. He's better now, and clearly," she looked at Vivian, "the house is full." She put the wineglass down on the counter. "Goodbye, Arthur." She turned and ran down the hallway to the guest suite. Arthur took a step to follow her. "Arthur Sterling,"
Vivian's voice was a whip crack. "If you chase after the help, don't bother coming back to this room. You have an image to maintain, or have you forgotten who we are?" Arthur stopped. He looked at the hallway where Mia had disappeared. He looked at the woman representing his world, his status, and his image. He stood frozen in the middle of the room, while Barnaby lifted his head and whined, sensing that the warmth had just left the building. Mia packed in 5 minutes. She didn't take the navy blue scrubs with her name embroidered on them. She folded them neatly on the bed, placing the expensive stethoscope on top. She put her old, oversized shelter uniform back on. She walked out to the living room. Vivian was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, a glass of wine in hand. Arthur was standing by the window, staring at the city lights, his back rigid. "I'm leaving," Mia said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Arthur turned around. "Mia." "The instructions for his medication are on the counter," Mia interrupted, refusing to look at him because if she did, she might cry. "He needs the anti-inflammatory with food, twice a day. Don't skip it." She knelt down one last time to Barnaby. The dog sensed the goodbye. He pressed his head against her knee and let out a low, mournful sound. "Be a good boy, Barnaby," Mia whispered, kissing his head. "You're safe now." She stood up, grabbed her backpack, and walked to the elevator. She placed her key card on the console table. "Goodbye," she said to the room. "Ta-ta," Vivian waved her fingers without looking up. Arthur took a step forward, his mouth opening to say something. Stay? Don't go? I love you? But the elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the image of the girl in the dirty clothes who had saved his best friend. In T, Sterling penthouse, 3 days later. The silence was back, but this time it wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Arthur sat at the dining table. Vivian was recounting a story about a disastrous gala in Paris where the champagne wasn't chilled properly. "And can you believe it, Arthur? Plastic flutes in the VIP section. I nearly died," Vivian laughed, a sharp, tinkling sound. Arthur stared at his steak. It tasted like rubber. He looked over at the playpen. Barnaby was lying there, facing the wall. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He hadn't moved. He looked like he was fading away again, not from injury, but from a broken heart. "You're not listening to me," Vivian snapped, tapping her fork on her glass. "I'm listening," Arthur said, rubbing his temples. "Plastic flutes, a tragedy." "You're in a mood," Vivian sighed. "Is it the dog? He's been whining all day. It's giving me a migraine. Honestly, Arthur, if he's that miserable, maybe it's time to consider humane options?" Arthur dropped his fork. It hit the plate with a loud clatter. "He is grieving, Vivian," Arthur said coldly. "He misses Mia." "Oh, please. He misses the peasant girl who fed him treats? He's a dog, Arthur. He has no memory. You're projecting your own infatuation onto an animal." "It wasn't infatuation," Arthur stood up. "It was gratitude. Call it what you want, but fix the dog or I will." In T, Sterling penthouse, the next night. A storm had rolled into Seattle. Rain lashed against the penthouse windows, a torrential downpour that turned the world gray. Arthur came home late from the office. He had stayed late on purpose, dreading the thought of going home to Vivian. He unlocked the door. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. "Vivian?" Arthur called out. "In the bath, darling," she called back from the master suite. Arthur walked into the living room. He looked at the playpen. Empty. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. "Barnaby?" He checked the kitchen. Empty. He checked the guest room. Empty. Then he heard it. A faint scratching sound and a whimper. It was coming from the balcony doors. Arthur turned to the massive glass sliding doors that led to the terrace. Outside, the rain was coming down in sheets. The wind was howling. And there, pressed against the glass, soaking wet and shivering violently, was Barnaby. Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. He ran to the door and threw it open. The wind blasted him with freezing rain. He scooped up the small, trembling dog. Barnaby was ice cold. His splint was soaked through.
He was terrified, his eyes wide and pleading.
"Oh my God,"
Arthur gasped, pulling the dog inside and slamming the door.
"I've got you! I've got you!"
He fell to his knees on the marble floor, hugging the wet dog to his chest, trying to transfer his warmth. "Arthur?" Vivian walked out of the bedroom, wrapped in a silk robe, a face mask on. She stopped when she saw the puddle of water on the floor. "Oh, you found him," she said casually. "I put him out for a bit. He wouldn't stop scratching at the guest room door. It was annoying." Arthur froze. He slowly turned his head to look at her. "You put him out?" Arthur's voice was a whisper, but it carried more danger than a scream. "In a storm? With a broken leg?" "Ideally, the rain would have washed the shelter smell off him," Vivian shrugged, inspecting her nails. "Don't be dramatic, Arthur. He's an animal. He belongs outside." Arthur stood up, holding the shivering dog. He looked at Vivian, and for the first time he saw her clearly. He didn't see a socialite. He didn't see a partner. He saw a monster in a silk robe. He thought of Mia. Mia, who had run into a dark alley to save a stranger's dog. Mia, who had broken the law to stop his pain. Mia, who had slept on the floor so he wouldn't be lonely. And then he looked at Vivian, who had locked a helpless, injured creature in the freezing rain because he was annoying. "Get out," Arthur said. Vivian blinked. "Excuse me?" "Get out." Arthur walked toward her. "Pack your bags, take your Louis Vuitton, take your plastic champagne flutes, and get the hell out of my house." "Arthur," Vivian laughed nervously. "You're joking. Over a dog?" "Not over a dog." Arthur stopped, inches from her face, his eyes blazing with a fury that could burn down cities. "Over the fact that you have a black hole where your heart should be. You called Mia a peasant? She has more nobility in her little finger than you have in your entire bloodline." He walked to the front door and opened it wide. "You have 10 minutes before I have security throw you out. And Vivian, if you ever come near me or my family again, I will ruin you." Vivian stared at him. She saw the look in his eyes. It was the look of the ruthless CEO who destroyed competitors. She didn't argue. She ran to the bedroom. 10 minutes later, the elevator doors closed on Vivian Vanderbilt forever. Arthur was alone in the silent apartment. He looked down at Barnaby, who was wrapped in a dry towel, still shivering. "I'm sorry, buddy," Arthur whispered, burying his face in the dog's fur. "I'm so sorry. I fixed it. The witch is gone." Barnaby licked his hand weakly. Arthur stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the rain. He knew what he had to do. He had fired the wrong person, and now he had to go beg for her back.
But this time, he wasn't going to offer her a contract. He was going to offer her everything. Exterior, Mia's apartment building, night. Arthur's limousine screeched to a halt in front of a crumbling brick building in the East End. It was the address listed in the investigator's file. Arthur didn't wait for the driver. He jumped out, clutching a leash. Barnaby, wrapped in a dry towel and wearing a waterproof bootie on his splinted leg, hobbled beside him. Arthur ran up the cracked steps to the front door. He buzzed apartment 4B. No answer. He buzzed again. Long, desperate presses. "Ain't there, buddy." Arthur spun around. An elderly woman was smoking on the stoop next door, watching him with suspicion. "I'm looking for Mia Flores," Arthur said, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. "It's an emergency." "Yeah, well, her emergency happened tonight." The woman exhaled smoke. "Landlord finally kicked her out, came with the sheriff at 8 p.m., changed the locks. She packed what she could fit in a bag and left." Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. "Where did she go?" "Said something about a bus ticket. Back to Arizona, maybe? Or somewhere cheaper than here. Poor kid looked heartbroken." Arthur checked his watch. 9:45 p.m. The last Greyhound South left at 10 p.m. 15 minutes, Arthur whispered. He scooped Barnaby up into his arms. "To the station," Arthur yelled at his driver as he dove back into the car. "Drive like you're robbing a bank." Exterior, Greyhound bus station, night. The bus station was a chaotic sea of wet umbrellas, exhaust fumes, and tired people. Arthur Sterling burst through the doors, a billionaire carrying a bandaged dog, looking frantic. He scanned the departure board. Phoenix, departing Gate 4, 10 p.m., status boarding. Gate 4, Arthur muttered. He took off running. He dodged a family with a stroller. He hurdled a spilled suitcase. He ignored the security guard yelling, "Hey, no dogs allowed." He reached Gate 4 just as the line of passengers was disappearing into the bus. The driver was checking the last ticket. "Mia!" Arthur shouted. He scanned the crowd. He didn't see her. The bus engine roared to life. "Wait!" Arthur ran up to the driver. "Stop the bus. Is there a Mia Flores on board?" The driver, a burly man who looked like he had zero patience for drama, crossed his arms. "Sir, step back. We're leaving." "I need to check the bus." "You need a ticket or a badge. You got neither. Back off." The driver reached for the lever to close the door. Arthur was desperate. He was about to do something crazy, like buy the bus, when Barnaby let out a sharp, piercing bark. "Woof! Woof!" Barnaby wasn't looking at the bus. He was looking at a bench in the far corner of the waiting area, hidden in the shadows. Arthur followed the dog's gaze. Sitting there, huddled in her oversized shelter coat, with her backpack on her lap and her head in her hands, was Mia. She wasn't on the bus. She'd missed it. Or maybe she couldn't bring herself to get on. "Mia!" Arthur ran to her. Mia looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. When she saw Arthur, soaked, out of breath, holding Barnaby, she looked like she was hallucinating. "Arthur?" she whispered. What are you doing here?" "I'm looking for the knight," Arthur gasped, setting Barnaby down. The dog hobbled over to Mia and buried his face in her neck, whimpering with relief. Mia instinctively wrapped her arms around him, tears instantly spilling over. "You left," Arthur said, kneeling in front of her on the dirty station floor, ruining his suit trousers. "You just left." "I was fired," choked Mia, "by your girlfriend, and I was evicted. I have nowhere else to go, Arthur. I have to go home." "You are home," Arthur said fiercely. "Seattle is your home. The penthouse is your home." Mia shook her head, pulling away. "Don't. Please don't play games with me. Vivian made it very clear where I stand. I'm the help. I'm the peasant." "Vivian is gone," Arthur said. Mia froze. "What?" "I threw her out," Arthur said. "She put Barnaby outside in the storm. She locked him on the balcony because he was crying for you." Mia gasped, clutching the dog tighter. "She did what?" "She showed me who she really is." Arthur reached out and took Mia's hand. Her fingers were cold. "And she showed me who I was becoming, and I hated it." He looked deep into her eyes. The station noise seemed to fade away. "Mia, I didn't come here to offer you a job. I didn't come here to offer you a scholarship. I came here because my house is quiet. My dog is broken, and I am incomplete without you." "Arthur," Mia whispered, her resistance crumbling. "We're from different worlds. You saw the file. I have debt. I have baggage. You have everything." "I have nothing," Arthur corrected gently. "If I don't have you, I have nothing but a view of a rainy city." He squeezed her hand. "Come back. Not as a nurse, not as an employee. Come back as my partner. Let me pay off the debt. Let me fix the credit. Let me do for you what you did for Barnaby. Let me save you." Mia looked at the man kneeling in the dirt. She looked at the dog who loved her. She looked at the bus that was pulling away without her. "You're going to ruin your suit," she sniffled, a small, watery smile appearing. "I'll buy a new one," Arthur smiled back. "Or I'll just wear scrubs. I hear they're very comfortable." Mia laughed. It was a sound of pure relief. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Arthur didn't care about the audience. He didn't care about the germs on the floor. He leaned forward and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of rain, exhaustion, and second chances. Barnaby barked happily, his tail thumping against the bench. Arthur pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. "Let's go home." "Yeah." Mia grabbed her backpack. "Let's go home." Arthur stood up, helped her up, and then picked up Barnaby. With one arm holding the dog and the other hand firmly gripping Mia's, Arthur Sterling walked out of the bus station, leaving his old life behind in the exhaust fumes. Exterior, city animal shelter, day, 5 years later. The gray, depressing concrete block was gone. In its place stood a gleaming modern facility with large glass windows, a grassy run area, and a sign above the door in silver letters. The Barnaby and Mia Sterling Veterinary Center. Free care for animals in need. A crowd had gathered for the grand opening. News cameras flashed, but this time they weren't reporting on a scandal. They were reporting on a miracle. Arthur Sterling stood at the podium. He wasn't wearing a trench coat. He was wearing a simple button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. He looked relaxed, happy, and approachable. 5 years ago, Arthur spoke into the microphone, his voice clear and steady, I thought I knew the value of everything. I could tell you the price of a building, a stock, or a company.
He looked down at the front row. Mia was sitting there. She was wearing a white doctor's coat over a chic floral dress. Her hair was loose and shiny. On her lap sat Barnaby, older, a little grayer around the muzzle, but perfectly healthy, his tail wagging against her knee. "But I didn't know the value of a life," Arthur continued, looking at Mia. "I met a woman who risked her freedom to save my best friend, even when she had nothing. She taught me that true wealth isn't what you have in the bank. It's what you're willing to give away to help someone else." Arthur smiled. "Today, this center opens with a promise. No animal will be turned away because of money, and no person who tries to help will ever be treated with anything but respect." The crowd applauded. Mia wiped a tear from her eye. Arthur stepped down and walked to her. He didn't shake her hand. He kissed her forehead. "Ready, Dr. Sterling?" he whispered. "Ready," Mia beamed. She stood up, grabbed the giant ceremonial scissors, and cut the red ribbon. Interior, the center, surgical suite, later. The party was winding down. Mia was in the new surgical suite A. It was state-of-the-art. Everything she had dreamed of as a broke student was now hers to command. Arthur walked in holding 2 glasses of very affordable, very delicious sparkling cider. "You looked good out there," Arthur said, leaning against the doorframe. "Dr. Albright is terrified you're going to put her out of business." "I might," Mia laughed, checking the vitals monitor on a recovering stray cat. "I have a better business partner than she does." Arthur walked over and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You know, I was thinking, we have the house, we have the dog, we have the clinic. What's missing?" Mia turned in his arms, raising an eyebrow. "Don't say a pony. Barnaby would get jealous." "I was thinking a human," Arthur smiled softly. "Someone to inherit the empire and maybe learn Spanish from their mom." Mia's breath hitched. She placed a hand on his cheek. "I think Barnaby would like a brother or a sister." Arthur kissed her. It was a slow, deep kiss that promised a lifetime of happy endings. Interior, the Sterling penthouse, night. The penthouse was different now. The cold, white furniture was gone, replaced by comfortable, lived-in sofas. There were dog toys scattered on the floor. There were photos of family on the mantel. But there was one new piece of art on the wall, in a place of honor right above the fireplace. It wasn't a Picasso, it wasn't a Monet. It was a small black and white print framed in gold. It was a still frame from a grainy security tape. Timestamp, 23:14 p.m. Image, a girl in a soaking wet t-shirt standing defiantly in front of a table, arms spread wide to shield a broken dog from the police. Arthur stood in front of it, a glass of water in hand. Mia walked up beside him, Barnaby trotting at her heels. "I still can't believe you framed that." Mia shook her head, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I look terrified." "You look brave," Arthur corrected her. "That's the moment I fell in love with you. I just didn't know it yet. I was too busy being an idiot." "You were a very handsome idiot," Mia teased. "And you were a very stubborn criminal," Arthur countered. Barnaby let out a loud woof, demanding attention. Arthur bent down and scratched the dog behind the ears. Yeah, you're the hero," Arthur laughed. "We know."
He stood up and put his arm around his wife. They looked at the picture one last time, the grainy evidence of the worst night of their lives, which had somehow led to the best life they could imagine.
"Lights out, Knight," Arthur whispered.
"Lights out, King," Mia replied.
The lights in the penthouse dimmed, leaving only the city glow and the warmth of a home that was finally full. If you loved Barnaby's journey, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of redemption and love.